If you see these images and think slip and slide, you might just be Gen X. It's Saturday. I'm Akorn. Welcome back to Gen X and Millennial Memes, September Rewind 2025. But first, I have a few things that I wanted to add to today's video. I wasn't going to do a best of video today, but I was feeling fairly rough this week and wasn't able to get a whole new show done. With that said, I wanted to cover a couple of things in today's show. First, we all know of stovetop stuffing mix. Many of us grew up with this, and you could find it in just about any grocery store. But what I wanted to ask you all is this question. What company do you remember making stovetop stuffing mix? Is it Stouffer's stovetop stuffing? Or is it Kraft stovetop stuffing? Now personally, I clearly remember Stouffer's stovetop stuffing mix. There was even kids that would use this as a tongue twister, kind of like me trying to talk in this video today. However, with that said, they claimed that there never was a Stouffer's stovetop stuffing mix, and that it was instead from General Mills, who was then bought by Kraft. Now, many will quickly point out that Stouffer's only makes frozen meals, and that may be true now, but I know what I remember. And don't get me wrong, guys, if you remember something else, I guess we're just on different sides of this split history timeline, or whatever the so-called Mandela effect really is. However, even though today, when it's claimed that Stouffer's stovetop stuffing mix never existed, there has been people that has found remnants of it being made by Stouffer's. And while I was actually looking into this, I personally found one of these remnants myself earlier this month on November the 4th. And I didn't just find it anywhere, but rather it is on the official Facebook page for the Evansville, Indiana 411 News. This is the screenshot that I took directly from their page. But not only is it right on the front of the box that it's very clearly seen with the Stouffer's logo, but you can also barely make the logo out right here on the top of the box, and again right here on this side of the box. Now again, this is on Evansville's 411 News page, and it has nothing to do with if it's made by Stouffer's or Kraft or whoever. They're simply talking about the lady who originally invented it. So, with that said, what do you guys remember? Was it Stouffer's stovetop stuffing? Or was it General Mills or later on Kraft? So let me know down in the comments, and let's see what the overall consensus is here on the channel. And then for some extra fun, remember to ask your family and see which one is it that they remember. Now here's a video clip from NBC News in 1984. I tried to find the original news clip for this without this over-narration, but thus far I've been unsuccessful at doing so. But the video is this NBC News reporter going through a grocery store and showing what it costs to make Thanksgiving dinner in 1984.
It is 1984 in Fort Worth, Texas. NBC News wants to make a story about how much will it cost to feed 6 people for Thanksgiving. He brings in a shopping list and he's ready to shop. He grabs a cart. He finds turkey as low as 69 cents a pound, but went with a self-basting one for 12 pounds for $1.05. In the dairy area, real butter. But what about whipped cream?
Make your own, make it fresh.
No Cool Whip on the holidays,
No
huh?
Cool Whip.
Real whip.
Can't have the cheap stuff on the holidays. Gotta impress relatives.
$1 gallon of milk for the kids and some rolls for that real butter. Next is fresh Texas yams, 55 cents a pound, and 5 pounds of potatoes to mash. Pumpkin pie filling, mushroom soup for the casserole, pecans and brown sugar for the yams, cranberry sauce. Then, pie shells, coffee for the adults. A few more items, and he was ready for the checkout.
Meanwhile, my total, $34.71.
Scrambled eggs? I'll take 2. Deviled eggs? Give me 38. I don't know how people do it, but I've seen people eat a lot of deviled eggs before. I eat 2, maybe 3, and that's all I want. If you ever wonder why nothing really bothers Gen X, just remember, we were sitting in school watching this happen live, then told to get back to our classwork after watching people pass away. How everyone over 40 looks when they read. So far, I've never needed bifocals, and I hope I never do. So how did you get into classical music? Me. That is true, actually. This dude saved a lot of kids from going home and getting their butt whooped. I haven't the slightest idea why we might have needed something like that for. Hey, what's in your mouth? Me and my dog for the next 5 minutes. That actually is true. Wanna feel old? Pat Morita was only 52 years old when he played Mr. Miyagi. Twizzlers taste like as if someone was vaguely thinking of cherries while melting plastic bags into a pasta noodle press. Once you kind of think about it, they're really not wrong. Futuristic movie timeline. You are here. No, we're not there. We're much further along than that. IDIOCRACY is only the 4th movie from the bottom. Although Soylent Green probably is happening right now. Generation X watching Blazing Saddles. Generation Z watching Blazing Saddles. Raise your hand if Tom and Jerry is one of your favorite cartoons. I'm not saying I'm definitely too old for you, but I do remember when call waiting was the hot new feature on wall-mounted corded house phones. Yes, we do. You've never felt pain until this latch pinched your palm skin. That is pretty accurate. Those things would certainly hurt. Looks very close to the one that's on my truck. I learned the hard way though. You don't use your hand. You use a large screwdriver. 80s parents when you tell them you don't like what's for dinner. You might get a lot worse than that. Life hack. Keep a 40-year-old fridge in your garage, so you will still have a working fridge when the one you bought this year stops working next year. That is the honest goodness truth, too. I have a refrigerator from the early 90s that's over in my barn, and it still runs perfectly fine. Photographic evidence of why my generation is tougher than yours. Yeah, this has all definitely been banned by these days.
When this guy rushed out of the house, most people didn't understand why he was in such a hurry. But it turned out he lived right next to a train track and was about to witness something truly special. As he and his friend waited anxiously, a train slowly emerged behind the bush, and it turned out to be Thomas the Tank Engine.
Cars these days have too many gadgets. I tried to reverse and it played a video of somebody getting run over by a car. That one's pretty bad. I think I look pretty young for my age. Me and the self-checkout camera. When we were kids and saw this, you knew it was about to get real. The sole reason Gen X will live to 100. Maybe we should go back to taking Flintstone vitamins now. I'm at the age that not finding parking for an event is enough to make me go home. That would be true if I actually went to any events. The inventor of Pop Rocks. Sugar is not good enough. It also needs to detonate. Kinda sums it up, yeah. My friends asking me about movie recommendations. Me. 80s and 90s movies they've never heard of. This was probably the most irrational childhood fear that I had. Hey, what's irrational about it? With how things are going these days, it wouldn't surprise me at all. If you grew up with this, your grilled cheese sandwiches always slapped. I still actually have one of these. I just need to get a new piece of stainless wire to replace it with because the old one broke on a really hard block of cheddar. (1970s) childhood trauma. If your childhood had orange carpet, orange wallpaper, orange furniture, orange dishes, orange decorations, and orange curtains, you may be entitled to compensation. 2025 is almost as bad as the year these guys were the Dukes of Hazzard. That's pretty bad. What if Peach wants to be with Bowser, but Mario keeps kidnapping her? Well, that would be a plot twist. Remember in 3rd grade when you were practicing your times table and then somebody threw up out of nowhere? Yeah, I do. And how many of you remember that stuff that they threw on it? It looked like sawdust. I don't know what it was really made of, but the smell was so awful because it didn't actually cover up the vomit smell. It just mixed with it. And it smelled so bad, it would almost make me sick. Yeah, I'm sure it's real fun to iron. Although, this is the kind of toys that they need to bring back. 6-year-olds today have iPads and iPhones. Me at 6. Yeah, that is very true. Us as kids just thought it made a funny sound. At least until Dad or Mom come in there and told us we better stop. Nowadays, when I hit one of those with my foot or something, I'm trying to step on it then just to stop it from making noise. Here's a clip I came across today while prepping content for the show. This is some of the behind the scenes and also some of the problems that the actors faced while filming, especially poor old Bob.
Did you know in Super Mario Bros., Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo did not have a good time on set and would often drink to deal with the terrible directors. Hoskins had the worst of it though, as he was required to do a lot of his own stunts, and this resulted in multiple injuries. According to Hoskins himself, he was stabbed 4 times, electrocuted, broke fingers, and was nearly drowned. The finger break came after a scene where the van door was accidentally closed on his hand, and he had to wear a splint for the rest of filming. The splint was painted his skin tone so that it wouldn't be obvious in the final movie, or they would pull down his sleeve over his hand so that the splint couldn't be seen underneath. It didn't work. You can still see the splint sometimes in the final product. And with all those injuries, I bet Hoskins was very tempted to say, "It's a me," quitting. Did you also know that the de-evolution weapon seen at the end of the movie wasn't a prop that was made specifically for the movie? The props department just painted a Nintendo Super Scope a different color and used it in those scenes. Nintendo wanted them to use the product, thinking that if the movie was a success, it would help boost the sales for the failing Nintendo accessory released in 1992, a year before the movie came out. Sadly, Super Mario Bros. Would go on to be a box office failure and only make back half of its budget, and the Nintendo Super Scope would go on to be an abysmal failure for the company and cease production in 1997.
Kids, this is what the phrase "the good old days" means. They finally bottled the perfect sports drink for Gen Xers. Somebody needs to turn this into a real bottled water company. I'd actually buy these. I'm old enough to remember when ice cream came in a box. Not only that, it was also a full half-gallon too. Me. Oh, I like that character. I hope he doesn't unalive. The character. Seems that way sometimes. People crying over stepping on Legos have never heard of Jax. And that is the absolute truth, too. You think Legos are bad? Just step on some of these road spikes. At what age do we start meeting up for bingo? I'm ready! How many of you play bingo these days? I have to say, I actually do have a bingo game app on my phone. If you got your driving skills by watching Smokey and the Bandit and the Dukes of Hazzard, we can be friends. Gen X Family Feud. You are waiting for your buddy to call you about the basketball practice, but the phone cord is stretched into your sister's room and the door is closed. What do you do? Well, depends on your objective. You could just hang up because all she has is the receiver. Or, if you're quick enough, you could unplug her receiver and plug another one in from another phone, and then you can talk to your sister's friend. The best part of going to Pizza Hut. I do remember playing a good number of the tabletop arcade games. I know there was Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and I think I remember playing one that was either Pong or something similar to it. What other tabletop arcade games do you guys remember? We traded this for spending $50 a month scrolling through 4 different services for shows and movies you'll never actually watch. You have to survive 20 minutes with one of them to receive $100 million. Which one you gonna choose? I'm not picking any of them. I'd just lose, and I still wouldn't get the money. If you guys ever wondered about the Peanuts family tree, here you go.
Going nowhere but up. We're looking for a high of 98 today. Torture of a scorcher. They are flying on the freeways to Wasabi.
Okay, who's first?
Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
I have to admit, although I don't drink regular sodas very much now, I did always like Pepsi more than Coca-Cola, especially back when it was at Pizza Hut. I'll hit you so hard that words describing their impact will appear out of thin air. A large part of being a mom is staring at your kids like this until they start acting better. I think we all can agree with that. The evolution of Garfield. Being an adult is terrible, but I thank God every day that I don't have to randomly run a mile at noon against my will and then go on about my day like we did in school. I remember that there was at least 1 year that I had gym like first thing in the morning. At first, I thought it would be a cool class to start today. After a little while though, not so much. I thought this one here was pretty funny. Somebody should ask if they have the same hairdresser. The Tim Hawkins Handbook of Alternative Cuss Words. Field tested and mother approved. I just thought this one here was pretty funny. You guys are welcome to pause the video if you want to read it. Can you remember one transgender kid when you were growing up? Me neither. In 1997, the Brits let their government take away all their guns. Now they get arrested for memes. Fact check true. I've had some of the news articles on Sunday show. You have to eat your birthday month for a month or starve. I like pancakes and waffles, but I couldn't do it for a month. If Back to the Future was made today, Marty would be traveling back to 1995. That just ain't right. Sorry, but 50 years down the road, no one is going to be restoring a Tesla. Things nobody said in the 70s. I'll start. I lost my phone. Well, with all these new electric car drivers, how about I put my car on autopilot? Going to bed in the 80s. No internet, no mobile phone. Yeah, just a clock and your radio. 70s and 80s moms be like, "Stop exaggerating. I barely touched you." Happy 50th anniversary to Jaws. Just needs his life alert button. No sleep will ever be compared to the nights I spent wrapped up in this blanket. That is very true. My grandmother used to have 2 of these, if I remember right. How generations responded to being offended. Boomers, you're rude. Millennials, you're mean. Gen X, your mom. Congratulations! You've scrolled so far, you're now back on MySpace. I actually did have a MySpace account at one point. I kept hearing about it for the longest time, so there was one day that I went over there just to see what it was about. The person who stands in front of you at concerts. I'm 6'4", so I never really had that problem. Major Payne turns 65. I know that movie was in the 90s, but it's still a good movie. I've reached the age where I drive around and say, "Dang, I remember when all this was just woods." On my morning walk, 2 sprinklers counterclockwise, 1 clockwise at different speeds. Super Mario prepared me for this moment. And they say that you don't learn anything from video games. Only 80s kids remember the code to get 30 lives. What I would have really loved to have was a code that you could put in so you could shoot the dog. But I vaguely remember something on a past show back some time ago that I had mentioned that I had played a version where you were able to shoot the dog. And I think some of you left in the comments it was the arcade version that had that. You guys remember when we were kids and you go out to a pond or a lake and you try to find the perfect skipping rock just to see how far you could make it go? Well, look at the rock that this guy found and how far that it goes. Gotcha. Watching these two as a kid was one of the main reasons our generation grew up to be so sarcastic. Do you guys think that that's true? That we learned to be sarcastic because of these guys? Or were they just a reflection of our generation? The weather just went from 90 to 65 like it saw a state trooper. That was true a few days ago or so. We actually had some pretty decent weather for a change. But it went right back up to hot and humid again. We've had worse though. Car colors. 1980. 2025. Yeah, they're a lot like McDonald's. This right here was one of the only good things about dot matrix printers. You could make a cheap banner anytime you wanted. How we Googled in the 1980s. Usually in the library, although we did eventually get a full generic set of encyclopedias at home too. Me walking with a cool stick I found in the ground. How it looked. How it felt. My mom making me apologize for telling the weird neighbor kid he would get superpowers if he licked the white dog turds. How many of you guys did stuff like this to the new kids? Better yet, how many of you guys got caught? Kids these days may have iPads and smartphones, but they will never know the joy of putting an Ozzy Osbourne cassette tape in a Teddy Rumpskin. Your little Chuck Norris memes are cute, but this guy made it from New York City to Chicago on a holiday weekend with no money, babysat Kevin McAllister and Iceman's wife, saved the galaxy from Rick Moranis, and brought bobsledding to Jamaica. Some really great movies, too. Did you know that in 1987, 1 out of 5 mattresses sold in the US was a waterbed? No, I actually didn't know that. But now that I think of it, it's not that surprising. I wonder how many people is still using a waterbed that they bought in the 80s. Cracker Barrel CEO, Garth from Wayne's World. Yeah, they look pretty close. Age check. Do you know him as Arnold on Happy Days or Mr. Miyagi on The Karate Kid? I know him as both, and I'm sure most everyone else here does too. 8/8/1986. Never forget. I don't want to shame, but I think this publicity still of Spielberg and E.T. is about 80% more sexy than it really needs to be. You have to admit, that is kind of a weird pose. I am Pull Down Maps years old. Name a song title that asks a question. How about some George Strait? What's going on in your world? Meanwhile, at Stevie Wonder's house, so what does it mean when your brain lands on the stove instead of in the frying pan? Who watched this on a Sunday night and saw Tinkerbell dot the I? If Stranger Things actually filmed in the 80s, David and Winona would definitely play Steve and Nancy. Michael Jackson's Bad and Weird Al Yankovic's Even Worse album next to one another shortly after release in 1988. That's actually pretty funny. Was there anything better than going out to eat at Pizza Hut back in the day? I can hear and smell this picture. I'd say most of you know exactly what this is. And back when we were kids, for some reason, we all wanted one. I came across this one this week, guys, and I just think it's pretty funny. I learned why we are always ignored. I was at a leadership conference and one of the speakers was talking about generational strife. And she talked to, or about, the boomers, the millennials, and then the zoomers. And then she said, Gen X, I didn't forget about you, even if the rest of the world has. But I have no advice for you, for a few reasons. First, you don't need it. You're the most independent and self-sufficient generation in the history of mankind, and there is literally nothing I can teach you. Second, even if I did have something to tell you, you wouldn't care. And third, the reason we ignore you is because the rest of us are all terrified of you. If the zombie apocalypse ever happens, we're all hiding behind you. Somehow, you'll know what to do. I just thought this one was pretty funny, guys. What do you guys think about it? Gumby and Pokey. It was a great claymation show. In 1987, I learned that this was not an egg. No, it was our brain. Before Energizer and Duracell, there were these jokers. I definitely remember these batteries, especially the size D, because that's the ones that my dad's big flashlight took back in those days. Don't worry, babe, I'll pay. Whips out wallet. Darn right. A rare photo of a McDonald's staff member collecting apple pie filling in the 1980s. Yep. Actual photo. Who remembers slush puppies? Yeah, I certainly do. And I still like a slushie once in a while. Starsky settles down. Still a nice car. Leah Thompson, Elizabeth Shue, and Meg Ryan all shilled in commercials for Burger King early in their careers in the 80s. Never knew that before. every Friday for 13 years. Maybe that's why we liked it so well. There was one of the schools that I went to that at least at one point, they had two different lunch lines in the cafeteria. They had one that was supposed to be whatever was on this week's menu, and then the other one usually had either pizza or hamburgers, which the hamburgers wasn't very good. And you knew when they were having pizza because the line on that side would be halfway down the hallway. So I actually just looked this up, and apparently it's true. Middle children are dwindling. In the 1970s, it was common to have 3 or 4 children. Today, almost 65% of women with children only have 1 or 2. So the middle child is becoming increasingly rare. The fact that the middle children are going extinct is the most middle child thing I've ever heard. Speaking of the Mandela effect, here's something I came across this week that's pretty strange. You guys take a look at this and tell me what you think. This is why everything hurts. Yeah, that could potentially be part of it. I can smell this picture. Absolutely can. I actually found one of these markers and some boxes that have been packed away from who knows how many different moves, and I took the cap off and it was still good. I've used it several times since then. Nobody. Inflation. Yeah, even getting kidnapped costs money these days. You knew the album was great if they hit this lean on the cover. How many of you guys had the original style Mr. Coffee Maker in your house? My dad had one of these for I don't know how many years. I'm newspaper tables at Wendy's old. I actually forgot about these. Type the name of an 80s movie in the comments. Others will rate it out of 10. What would you guys rate the original Back to the Future? And then drop your 80s movie down in the comments for others to vote on. An open parking spot. Let's see who this really is. A motorcycle or a smart car. I've had that happen before. I'm not saying I'm lazy, but if a crock pot recipe starts with brown or sauté, we're done. Well, that's the entire point of a crock pot. You're supposed to put everything in it and walk away. If you have to do a bunch of prep work beforehand, kind of defeats the purpose. I'm this old. Kid. Dad, did your parents take good care of you when you were a kid? When I was a kid, they had to have TV commercials asking parents if they knew where their kids were. Fact check true. A car part that would sound like it's completely made up to somebody who doesn't understand cars. I'm gonna go with bell housing. What part would you guys pick? Goodbye, Mr. Hooper. How many of you guys actually saw that episode? I didn't even know about it until just recently. I was actually looking into it some, and the guy who played Mr. Hooper, an actor named William Lee, when he passed away in real life, Sesame Street also had Mr. Hooper to pass away, and they hired an entire episode that tried to explain to kids what happened. His last appearance on Sesame Street was actually about 3 months after he passed away. Today's kids have tablets, cell phones, and YouTube. We had this. Seems like I do remember these, but I never had any. The first time you beat Mike Tyson was one of the proudest moments of your life. What's a cartoon from the past that kids today probably never heard of? The first one that come to my mind was Captain Caveman. Speaking of which, how many of you guys knew that Captain Caveman was actually Barney Rubble? Gen Z, full of uncertainty, throws temper tantrums when things don't go his way and purposely destroys his own house, lashing out in anger. Can't control himself in front of his subordinates. Gen X takes responsibility, holds people accountable, and terminates incompetence accordingly. Uses constructive demonstrations to illustrate a point, never gives up when there's a setback. See the difference between commanding respect and demanding respect? Kids today have cool cars, and I object. Your first car needs to be a 1984 Geo Metro with a cracked windshield, an 8-track stuck on smooth jazz. How is your 8-track stuck on smooth jazz unless that's the one that you had in there and it won't come out? Anyway, a door that won't open, sparks flying off the tailpipe, and an ignition that only turns if you pray the rosemary 5 times. They need to make these cables as strong as these. I completely agree. They should be at least as strong as those cables. But instead, they're ridiculously easy to break, and they don't even always break at the plug. It's like this photo here. I actually had a cable that just up and broke in the middle of the wire for whatever reason. I may be old, but I think kids should do chores. They absolutely should. The problem is that younger me didn't account for the fact there'd be an older me. That is very true in many different ways. At this point, if the Goblin King invited me to the labyrinth, I would just go. How many of you guys remember the Chef Boyardee complete pizza in a box?
Now you can make pizzeria-style pizza right in your own oven with Chef Boyardee Pizza Mix. You get everything you need for fresh pizzeria-style pizza. Crunchy crust, Italian-style cheeses, lots of zesty sauce. Chef Boyardee Pizza Mix is fun, easy to make.
And delicious.
Yeah! Pizzeria-style pizza right in your own oven at a fraction of the cost with Chef Boyardee Pizza Mix.
My grandpa's fishing boat. No motor, just oars. No lights or numbers. No live box or swivel seats. As you can see, he had no problem catching fish. Of course, we ate the fish back then. What people need now: 2 motors and bucket seats, steering wheel, depth finder, sonar and probably radar, a gauge cluster, windshields, lights and numbers, and they throw the cotton-picking fish back. That is very true. For guys that's got the money, and that's how they want to spend it, hey, more power to you. But for me, I always just fish from the bank, or maybe out on the dock. Once in a while, you'd find a place where the bridge was just in the right place. We're down to only one cracker left now. We must protect him and his dog at all costs. Yeah, back when Cracker Jacks was in a box, they were definitely my favorite type of popcorn. I didn't even know that they still made this anymore, but I saw it somewhere in Walmart a couple months ago, but now it comes in a bag, and that just isn't the same. We really thought we were something when we went from this to this. How many of you guys remember your first cordless phone? I know ours wasn't a Sony. I want to say it was a Panasonic, but I'm not sure. But it was definitely a bit more boxy than this one here, and the phone itself also had the chrome antenna. With great power comes huge electricity bills. Yep, that's for sure. 325 Dodge Chargers were used in the 6 years of production on the Dukes of Hazzard. That's just pretty sad when you think about it. On my way to HR again for nicknaming my coworker MasterCard. because they take credit for other people's work. Too bad I couldn't have come up with that one back in the day. If you know what this one is, drop it in the comments. Not gonna lie, I always rooted for Wiley. This was definitely a guy's landscaping work, and it's great too. Teen Wolf 40-year anniversary. Didn't they already make a reboot of this or something back some time ago now? Ready for the drive-in? Man, look at all that trunk space. Wish we had that in cars today. The day before opening morning. Opening morning. Yeah, that'd be about par for the course, but these days I have deer that walk all around my yard here, sometimes even during the middle of the day. Another young actor's life destroyed by years of partying. Yeah, that's what happens when you don't use any soap, just fabric softener. Before the iPad. Humans saw this and invented email. That is true. Do you remember before the internet that it was thought the cause of collective stupidity was the lack of access to information? Well, that wasn't it. No, that certainly wasn't it. Today, people have access to almost unlimited information at their fingertips. But yet, we have some of the dumbest people that's ever walked the face of the earth. Sometimes I think, but then I forget. All too often. I think every family had this clock. Yeah, I know I had one that was very similar to this for a good number of years. I always hated the buzzer alarms on all the clocks back then, so I always liked the ones that could wake you up with the radio instead. I'd say most of you will get this. This is your brain. This is Tylenol. Any questions? Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it, but Tylenol and ibuprofen both actually are not good on your health, especially your kidneys and your liver. Which was your childhood Viewmaster? And can you recall any specific reels you had? The only ones that I really remember is the children's storybook ones. Apart from those, I can't say that I really remember any others. You might be Gen X if your grandma used to cut the mold off a block of cheese and said, "See, it's still good." Well, it is still good. I just did this a few weeks ago. Ain't a thing wrong with it. Back in the day, nobody had allergies. We just all ate dirt and moved on. Yep, pretty much. That's why we had a great immune system, though. Old Spice. Your father wore it. Your father's father wore it. Hell, even Father Time wore it. That is very true. A sci-fi movie masterpiece is finally getting an IMAX re-release. Back to the Future is making its IMAX debut this Halloween. Marty McFly and Doc Brown are heading back to the future for the film's 40th anniversary. And this time they're making their IMAX debut. Universal dropped a new trailer for the 1985 classic, spotlighting its iconic score and all the nostalgia fans could ask for. Anyone else wake up for work in the morning and just think, I can't wait for this day to be over so I can go back to sleep? Yes, I have. Having a 2 VCR setup meant you had a copy of every movie you rented from Blockbuster. Yeah, including the FBI warning. You're 14 and about to spend half an hour looking through all these posters without buying anything. Most of the time, yeah. That time when Michael Jackson showed up on the set of The Goonies. When your mom is shouting at your sibling and you know you're next. Yeah, you better look like you're busy cleaning your room or something. IBM announced the world's first hard disk drive, the 3.75 megabyte RAM AC 350 disk storage unit, 69 years ago today. The unit weighed more than a ton, and 50 platters ran at 1200 RPM. And just think about the amount of data that we can carry around in our pocket on a USB drive. It's sad, but it's pretty much true for a large portion of the younger generation. That's not a charger. Now that's a charger. Everyone talks about an inner child. I have an inner old lady who says inappropriate things, judges everyone, and wants to be in bed by 8 p.m. Not a cell phone in sight, just 3 friends living in the moment. You see a rat, but I see a hard-working dad just trying to feed his 4 teenage turtles. Yep, that's how it all started. If this brings back memories, it's time to schedule your colonoscopy. Until about a year ago, I never knew that the MD on these bottles actually stood for Mogan David. When did you guys realize this? Backing into spots like this, even though there is a backup camera, because we got our driver's license in the 1980s. The best thing that a backup camera is for is hooking up a trailer. Back about 15 years ago, I put one on the back of my truck, and it made so much easier to hook up a trailer when you're by yourself. Kids exploring ancient ruins. That one actually looks like it's still operational. It even appears that it still has the phone book hanging there. When you're drunk at 3 a.m. and you add shredded cheese to your frozen pizza. You could also just add a little garlic powder, maybe some red pepper, and some Parmesan cheese. Yellow Wendy's used to hit different. I think their Frosties were a lot better back then. Actually, everything was better back then. The truth is, half of us grew up with wood-paneled walls and no idea we were poor. You can only keep 3. I guess I'd have to say Kit, the Time Machine, and I'll have to go with General Lee. What 3 would you guys pick? From about 1983 to 1991, Phil Collins sang like every 4th song on the radio. If you were in your car with the radio on for 15 minutes, you heard a Phil Collins at least once. That's just how it was. I feel like those over 40 will confirm this to be accurate. He just had a lot of really good songs at the time. I sure don't remember hearing people complaining about how much they were playing them. My high school had a smoking area. Yes, it did. We were on a field trip one time, and the bus stopped at a gas station, and we were allowed to go inside. While I was in there, I remember buying a pack of cigars, and we lit them up when we got back on the bus. I even gave one to our teacher. He asked me if I had a light, so I gave him my lighter, and he sat and smoked with us on the way back to school. Is Clark Kent related to Superman? They look a little bit alike, but it's just more of those crazy conspiracy theories. Before the internet, these people would take your order, write down an address, and deliver a pizza to your home in less than 30 minutes by using a paper map like some sort of mystical land pirate. While that is true, most delivery drivers are just so familiar with the delivery area that they basically just have it memorized. It gets to a point that they don't even have to think about what order that their stops need to be in for all the customers to get their orders on time. I saw a guy at Starbucks today. No iPhone, no tablet, no laptop. He just sat there, drinking coffee, like a psychopath. Well, these days that would be unusual. If you do see someone like this now, you might want to actually keep your eye on them. You never know what's going through people's heads. Michael Keaton ranked as the #1 best Batman of all time. Yeah, Michael Keaton's portrayal was pretty good, but who do you guys like better, Michael Keaton or Adam West? Or is there another actor that played Batman that you like even better? Bring back shop class in all public schools. I agree 1000%. That is most definitely one of the classes that should have never been gotten rid of. Of course, they got rid of all the classes, which made you to have to think for yourself instead of just regurgitating the information told to us in a textbook. Guns N' Roses have really calmed down with age. Welcome to the garden. Please respect the rules. 36 years on the run, and Columbia House finally found me for not buying 8 CDs after they sent me 5 for 39 cents. In today's world, this actually wouldn't surprise me. If you know these guys, pension is close. The greatest chef of all time. When we went to Grandma's. When we went home. Gen X's plan to save the animals. That is true. I'll admit, I still cut these up to this day. Today's kids will never know the thrill of seeing who had your textbook the previous year. I remember one time when I was in school that one of my textbooks had only been used by one person, and then apparently nobody else used that textbook again for about 10 years until I got it. And you could tell because it still looked almost brand new. Did parents really just let their kids roam the neighborhood all day long without phones or water bottles and say, "Be back before dark"? Yes, they did. Most every day, actually. It's Friday night. Your pizza is delivered. The Breakfast Club is ready to rock on your TV. No school tomorrow, and you have permission to stay up late. You're 52 years old, and the year is 2025. Before the internet, somebody would tell you there's a ghost in the movie 3 Men and a Baby, and you would go rent it to see for yourself. How many of you guys ever heard about this one? Well, they called them bicycle cards. 70s kids. Okay, got it. Yeah, they worked pretty well for that. This is not the only Mandela effect that I've never read a good explanation for. I know what I saw, and I absolutely do too. I would have never known what a cornucopia was if it wasn't for the Fruit of the Looms logo. How many of you guys agree with me that the logo on the left was the one that we grew up with? I don't care what anybody says. Instead of teaching us about financial literacy, they taught us how to play this thing, and not even very well. Where did you park? Next to the car that looks like a suspiciously stoned vampire. What? The car. You have to admit, they're not wrong. And the best 70s or 80s old school sandwich goes to, I just have to say, the grilled cheese. Those were always pretty good, but they actually didn't make them all that often. Things that used to hurt my back in 1980. Jumping off garages, crashing my bike, falling out of a tree, diving in the shallow end, contact sports. Things that hurt my back now. Sneezing, washing the dishes, brushing my teeth, tying my shoes, rolling over in bed. Sad how true some of these are. And I'll end today's show with this. If walking is good for your health, the postman would be immortal. A whale swims all day, only eats fish, only drinks water, and is fat. A rabbit only eats vegetables, runs and hops all day long, and only lives 5 years. A tortoise doesn't run and does nothing energetic, yet it lives for 450 years. And you tell me to exercise? I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe something to think about. We've officially remembered more than any of us needed to, so go share this video before you forget about it again. That's it for today's show, but I'll see you guys back here on tomorrow's show. Until then, I thank you all for watching. You guys take care and stay safe this weekend. This is Akorn, over and out.
You ever had that bad day at work where it's like, man, all it takes is one little thing and it just really piss you off? You're like, man, I'm about to, damn. Yeah. I'm ready to go home. You know what? I'm finna quit this job. I've been getting ready to quit anyway. You know what? Yeah, this is my last day. I'm finna retire.